Welcome to today's explainer. You know that feeling when your day is just over before it even really kicked off? You wake up, do a bit of doom scrolling, bounce around between random tasks, and suddenly it's pitch dark outside and you've got absolutely nothing to show for it? Well, if that sounds familiar, you are exactly in the right place. Today, we're completely ditching that overwhelmed, procrastinating mindset. Instead, we're stepping into a space of calm, logical execution. Think of this as your ultimate step-by-step guide to finally taking back your day.
Okay, let's dive into this, because honestly, this number is probably going to shock you. 7. The average person loses 7 entire hours every single day. And the crazy part is, you don't lose them all at once, right? They're stolen from you through these sneaky, invisible time leaks. We're talking about aimless scrolling, overthinking every little detail, putting things off, and let's be real, using exhaustion as a handy excuse.
Now, if you actually do the math on those 7 lost hours a day, it adds up to a completely staggering 3 whole months lost every single year. I mean, just pause and really think about that for a second. 3 months. In that amount of time, you could literally change the entire trajectory of your life. You could crush a massive exam, learn a completely new high-income skill, or even build a business from the ground up. You're already losing this time, but I bet you still catch yourself saying, "Man, I just don't have enough time."
Well, I want to reassure you right now. Your problem is definitely not a lack of time. And honestly, it isn't a lack of motivation either. The real issue, you just lack a system. So today, we're going to build you one using a 5-pillar roadmap. We're going to cover how to declutter, prioritize, structure, execute, and finally, sustain. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have total control over your day.
All right, let's jump right into Pillar 1, declutter, where we capture and interrogate your mind. You see, right now, the sheer mental overload from all those unwritten tasks, that's what's actually burning you out before you even start working. You sit down at your desk, and instead of zeroing in, your brain is juggling pending emails, tomorrow's grocery run, and a dozen other random things in your incredibly limited working memory.
So to fix this, you have to do what we call capture. And look, you do not need fancy apps for this. Just grab a simple blank piece of paper. You're going to dump every single thought, big or small, right onto that page. The very second you write it down, it actually signals to your brain, hey, you can let this go now. It instantly reduces your stress and speeds up how fast you make decisions. Then, once the mind is clear, we move to step 2, which is interrogate. You're going to look at that massive list and ask yourself one totally ruthless question. If this does not get done today, what is the actual 1-month impact? Notice we aren't asking if it's hard or easy, just what is the real-world impact? And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how you should categorize those tasks. If that 1-month impact is huge, give it a score of 90 to 100. That is your high-impact task. Execute it today. If it scores, say, a 50 to 80, okay, it's important, but it's not urgent. Delay it or schedule it for later. And if it's sitting somewhere between 0 and 40, honestly, if your life is going to go on just fine without it, delegate it or just completely eliminate it. Rating your tasks by their actual impact absolutely destroys that lingering guilt of not doing everything. Plus, it gives you instant clarity for the day ahead. Now that we've decluttered, let's move right into Pillar 2, prioritize, using something called the 1-hour reality test. You know, traditional to-do lists are actually kind of dangerous. Why? Because they only tell you what to do, but they never, ever tell you when. And that vagueness, that's exactly what leaves you feeling incredibly busy all day long without actually getting anything meaningful done.
So, as part of your morning routine to find your true priority, I want you to run this 1-hour reality test. Ask yourself, if a sudden emergency left you with only 1 single hour of work time today, what exactly would you do? To pull this off every morning, just run through a quick 3-step checklist. 1. Assume a sudden emergency blocks out your entire afternoon. 2. Limit your available focus time to just 60 minutes. And 3. Pick the single task that prevents disaster. Forcing yourself to think this way instantly strips away all the drama of that endless to-do list, and boom, it reveals your absolute highest impact priority.
And notice how this reality test applies perfectly to literally anyone. If you're a university student buried under a massive exam load, you're obviously not going to waste that hour casually color-coding old notes, right? No, you're going to dive straight into the highest yield chapters. Or, if you're a senior executive juggling a dozen high-stakes priorities, you are going to ignore those hundreds of unread emails, skip the low-impact meetings, and focus purely on that critical client deliverable. Your true priorities always emerge when time is constrained, and that shifts you right out of a fear-based reactive mode straight into calm, logical decision-making.
Okay, so we know what to do. Now it's time for Pillar 3, structure, And specifically, we're talking about time boxing for deep work. We've got to protect our mental energy so we can actually sit down and get the work done. And spoiler alert, this is where we completely abandon the traditional to-do list.
See, an endless to-do list practically begs you to procrastinate because there's no defined when. You just keep telling yourself, oh, I'll do it later. And of course, later ends up eating your entire day. A time box, on the other hand, gives you a rigid boundary. You take a specific task and assign it strict start and end times, say exactly 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. Suddenly, your brain doesn't have to debate when to start, and having that hard deadline forces you into a state of intense focus.
So the crucial point is understanding Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time you give it. If you tell yourself, I'm going to write this report today, guess what? It's going to take all day. But if you give yourself exactly 2 hours, your brain drops all the nonsense distractions and shifts right into turbo mode. You want to keep your time boxes between 60 to 90 minutes. That's actually the maximum amount of time a human brain can sustain truly deep focus anyway. And here is the golden rule. Enforce strict start and end times. When that timer rings, you stop. Never ever extend the work past the box. I promise you, doing this builds absolutely incredible discipline.
All right, you've got your priority, you've got your time box set up, but now we face the hardest part. Pillar 4, execute, using cinema mode and flow state. This step tackles that awful, fear-based hesitation that creeps in right when it's time to actually sit down and start working. You know the feeling? Your mind races, your hand magically reaches for your smartphone, and procrastination tries its hardest to win. So how on earth do we beat this?
We use something called cinema mode. Just think about the last time you went to a movie theater. You don't pull out your phone every 5 minutes or randomly get up to walk around, right? You are completely 100% immersed in the film. You need to recreate that exact same step-by-step distraction-free environment for your workspace. Keep your setup super consistent so your brain knows it's time to focus. Get your water, grab your notes, and have your tools ready beforehand. Put that phone on a strict do not disturb mode. Keep only one screen or window open for your one specific task. Because remember, every single notification is a mental reset that exhausts your brain. And finally, do not leave that chair until the scene, meaning your 60 to 90 minute time box, is totally over.
Now, even with the absolute perfect setup, your brain might still try to debate with you. It'll say, should I really start right now? This is exactly where the 5-second rule comes into play. The absolute second your time box starts, you tell yourself, don't think, just do. And you force yourself to take the first tiny action within 5 seconds. Taking that immediate action is a profound psychological shift. It practically yanks your brain right out of that paralyzing overthinking state and drops it straight into a calm, logical execution state. And once you start, momentum just takes over.
When you successfully enforce this cinema mode, the psychological payoff is massive. You enter the flow state. Productivity experts have found that after a solid chunk of uninterrupted focus, your brain shifts into this magical zone where work just naturally accelerates. You'll actually notice the progress markers as it happens. First, you totally lose track of time. Then, careless mistakes just vanish. And bizarrely enough, your mental fatigue completely disappears. You start making faster, much higher quality decisions. But listen to me on this. You will never ever reach flow state if you keep allowing those constant, tiny little distractions. Which brings us to our final pillar, sustain. Here, we prevent fatigue by using dedicated days. Look, you've learned how to focus, which is great, but a massive mistake people make is trying to juggle every single type of task every single day. A little bit of studying here, some admin work there, toss in some creative brainstorming. This is exactly what causes that heavy end-of-day exhaustion, even if you are perfectly using time boxes.
We call this context switching fatigue. Every single time you jump from studying a complex subject to, say, firing off some emails, and then back to project planning, your brain is forced to completely reboot its operational mode. Honestly, context switching is like a car that is constantly grinding its gears. You're burning massive amounts of mental engine energy, but you aren't actually building up any real speed or momentum.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our final solution: dedicated days. Highly productive people don't do a bit of everything. They assign a specific theme to each day. Say you're a student. Maybe Monday is purely for deep learning new concepts, while Thursday is strictly for intensive revision. Or if you're an executive, maybe Tuesday is locked in purely for client delivery. Now, this doesn't mean you literally ignore everything else in the world. It just means 60 to 70% of your focus goes to that one overarching theme. By batching your tasks like this, you completely remove the daily stress of deciding what to work on. You transition between your days without losing any momentum, and you effortlessly slip right back into that flow state.
So here is the real, undeniable truth. Highly productive people do not just sit around relying on motivation, and they honestly don't even necessarily work harder than you do. They just build better systems, period. You now know exactly how to spot your invisible time leaks, how to interrogate your priorities, how to use time boxes and cinema mode to trigger flow state, and how to theme your days so you don't burn out. My challenge to you right now is this: stop waiting for motivation to strike. Implement this system immediately and go reclaim your lost 3 months. So tell me, what is going to be the focus of your very first time box tomorrow?